Hey everybody, welcome to The Whole Elephant. I'm very excited about my guest today. You know, like when you meet somebody new and just immediately you want to be their friend. Like this, you just know right away that this is a good human that you want to get to know. That was my experience with Mark Gagliardi. He is such a kind, personable dude. And from the moment I met him, I'm like, I want to know this guy. I want to know him. He's an actor. He's he's one of the leads on the hit show Blood and Treasure on CBS, which season 2 should be dropping here pretty soon. If you haven't seen season 1, go check it out. And we had to talk about being an actor and making it here in this crazy world of acting. We know the cliche things like, oh, people come out to Hollywood and then they're a waitress and they never get their break and then they leave. And, we're around those cliche stories. And growing up here in Southern California, I've been around so many actors and I know how hard it is to break into that world. And so the fact that he's been able to make a career out of it is amazing. And we also get into dreams and aspirations and how that changes over time. And what that looks like. So I hope that after this, you will love Mark as much as I do. Enjoy the chat. Hey, Mark, how you doing, man?
Hey, Eric, how are you, my friend?
Here we are.
Good quarantine to you.
Yes, and also with you. That's the good Jesuit response.
Exactly. Well, look, now that I'm a fake Jesuit on television, that's the game.
I went to a Jesuit high school. I know all about the Jesuits.
Yeah? Jesuits are great, man. I'm a big fan of the order priests.
Yeah. I mean, Saint Loyola, he basically got hurt in a war and then was on psychedelic drugs. And while he was on psychedelic drugs, imagined God stomping out this serpent or whatever. But whatever gets you there, right?
Hey, look, it got him there. Yeah. and he created a whole order of priests out of taking his psychedelics, which is why Jesuits are usually the ones that you see with full sleeve tattoos underneath their vestments.
I had kind Jesuits and very unkind Jesuits.
Really?
That were my teachers in high school, but for the most part they were all right.
My high school was a public high school, but we had I was Catholic middle school. Elementary and middle school was all Catholic school. And but it wasn't one of the ones that was like run by nuns. It was a very layperson Catholic school for 8 years. There was just the one grumpy priest that also ran the parish.
Right.
There were like a couple of cool priests. There were no nuns teaching us. So like the whole cliche of the nun with the ruler, I never experienced. Yeah. Our only nun was our principal was a nun, but she had previously been an actor, so she would let me out to go do auditions and shows and stuff. So it was great, like being this little kid actor. And she was like, "Oh, you go ahead. Oh, don't you worry about your schoolwork. Well, you can get to that later." I love that a nun is living vicariously through my 11-year-old local plays. It was great.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, we're jumping ahead in the story a little bit, but you are on the CBS hit show Blood and Treasure.
Yes, I am.
Which had a fantastic first season.
Thanks, buddy.
Got renewed for a second season, and then COVID hit.
Yeah.
So have you filmed any of the second season, or what's the status of it right now?
Well, we filmed almost all of it. We were filming season 2 in Montreal starting in September of 2019. So we started in September 2019 and we shot in Montreal all the way up through January. So the way we do the show is it's 13 episode season, but it goes all over the world. So we pick 3 places to shoot that can double as other places around the world. It's always Montreal because that's our home base. That's where our crew is based. That's where our studio is. And also downtown Montreal can double for most of Europe. So we had Montreal until January, and then we took a couple weeks off and went to Thailand because Thailand was doubling all kinds of our story is very Asia centric this season. Season 1 was Africa and Europe. This season it's Asia centric. So we shot everything in almost everything. We were in Thailand until I think March 20th. And everything was slowly starting to shut down around us. And we're all watching the news coming from the United States. And we're like, man, everybody's crazy about something over there's going on.
Yeah.
But it hadn't really hit Thailand. And then one morning, we all went to breakfast and we got called down to a breakfast meeting at the hotel, which by this time we were the only people in the hotel. It was just the people who were working on the production. And by the time we, by this day, we were the only ones left. We go to breakfast and he's like, yeah, they finally pulled the plug. We were actually the last CBS show, maybe the last American network show that was still shooting.
Yeah.
And so they flew us home and we all just waited. And then, so we had finished of the 3 cities. We had done 2 of the 3 cities with a few things that we had missed in Bangkok and in the surrounding areas of Thailand. And then we waited for months and months, like everyone did. And we got the word in October that we were going back to. Or September, we got the word. We're going back to work, and this time we're going to do Rome. So I had to fly because most of my stuff I work in the Vatican. My character actually works within Vatican City. So and it was my entire season is mostly Vatican stuff because there's A plots and B plots going on a show all the time. Most of my life is in the Vatican. So consequently, most of my shooting for the season was the Vatican stuff. And I was like, great, we shoot like the bulk of the series, 75% of the series we shoot. And then when it's my turn to get run my leg of the relay, then it's months and months later.
Yeah.
Which was weird. There was a point where a buddy turned to me on the show and he was like, you realize we were shooting the scene right before this scene that's happening right now. We shot that 1 year ago today.
Wow.
Just the length of time that it took was so crazy. But in Rome, we did it. We managed to get absolutely everything. Even the stuff we missed in Thailand, we got it when we went to Rome. And we were all bubbled NBA style in a hotel. So we all had this hotel that we lived in for the 5-6 weeks. I was there an additional 2 weeks because I had to quarantine when I first got there.
Right. I just did an episode with Ralph Winter, producer and whatnot, and he just had gotten back from Japan.
Yeah.
I'm told that at one point Hollywood was in Los Angeles. That things that they actually made things in Los Angeles, and now people are flying all over the world. It seems like things are being made everywhere except for Los Angeles.
Yeah, I mean that's been the trend for years now. I think cities and states giving tax breaks, and then other countries. It's not cheap to shoot in LA.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate because I live in LA and I like living and working in LA and I like my apartment. The hotel living is great, but sometimes it's nice to be home.
Yeah. So what else have you been doing stuck at home in this quarantine time? I know you do a lot of voiceover stuff. You always have. What have you been up to?
I've been sitting in front of this mic a lot. Yeah, just sitting at this desk with this mic in front of me and a pair of headphones on, both for social and for work and related things like that. I mean, this is so bad. I had, like, you can see behind me, I've got my mat for like my workout mat and my weights and all that stuff. And I have opened up that mat recently, but I did not pick up the weights. I played Xbox Connect, but hey, I played Xbox Connect, so that's something physical, right?
Yeah. I mean, most people talk about, the body pressure that female actresses go through. Is that a thing that's constantly in your mind? I have to go back and film this. I can't gain 10 pounds.
During that off season, I knew, I was like, they could call me at any point. And I have to be the exact same size that I was.
Yeah.
So I actually aired on the side of less, and I wound up slightly smaller than I was
Mm.
for the first round. So there will be scenes where I am upstairs at one weight, and then I walk downstairs and I am a different weight.
Yeah.
But yeah, the pressure is not as bad, for guys as it is for women in this
Yeah.
job.
When you have a big show like that where you're a regular, are you also
Mhm.
auditioning for other things at the same time, or are you pretty locked into that?
I'm locked in. I'm locked in on a contract but I can do a couple of guest spots on other things. And like
Okay.
that's sort of what the rule is, like on paper, just so they have it. But my boss is cool. Like the showrunner on our show is great, and CBS, the network is awesome. And if I said like, "Hey, I've got time now. Can I go do another thing?" They'd be like, "Yeah, sure." Not that that's
Yeah.
happened because A, COVID, and B, I just,
Yeah.
this was a
Yeah.
lucky break for me. This show was a lucky break. It's not like they're banging down the door.
Well, I mean, we'll get to that point, but
Sure.
you say lucky break, but it's literally decades of hard work that got you to that point.
That's true. It's opportunity meets preparedness,
Yeah.
I guess. I got
Yeah,
lucky to get
you're
the
one of those
opportunity.
overnight successes.
Right. It's been doing it for 30 years.
Yeah. So you said that you were an 11-year-old going out for auditions.
Yeah.
When did acting start for you? How young were you when you started, and what was the initial push there?
When I was 5, there was a show on television on Nickelodeon, OG Nickelodeon. You're a few years younger than me, but you probably remember some of the old school Nickelodeon from back in the day. There was a show called Stand By Lights Camera Action, and it was hosted by Leonard Nimoy from Star Trek, and it was just behind the scenes on different movies and TV shows. And I was fascinated by this. And I remember, and then also I had seen the behind the scenes documentaries for Return of the Jedi, that great footage they got for Return of the Jedi, and some for a Bond movie. And so like I became obsessed with these behind the scenes views of the world, or peek behind the curtain, I guess.
Yeah.
And I told my mom, I was like, I want to be an actor when I grow up. And she was like, all right, which, that's amazing to have parents that I don't think she thought I was serious because I was 5. And a 5-year-old saying, I'm going to be an actor when I grow up is, but I was serious. And she was like, okay. She put me in acting classes at our local theater. They had like acting classes for kids, and I was the youngest one in there. And I did my first play in December of 1985. I was 5 years old, and it was the best Christmas pageant ever. Or was I 6 years old? I started the class when I was 5. I can't do the math in my head.
Yeah.
And then I just started doing plays, and I did plays at the Bijou, which was our local historic theater in Knoxville, that had been an old vaudeville house. And so I did plays there up until high school, really. And then I got involved in I was in a show choir as a kid as well. So I was singing, and we were traveling around doing that in my sequin bow tie, which was amazing. And my Elvis jumpsuit. I was a little kid Elvis impersonator.
Nice.
And then I got to high school, and it was like, I loved working at the Bijou and doing plays there. But if I joined the drama club in high school, then that would help me socially as well. And I'm not leaving school to go do things. I found my peer group in high school. And I think that's always been the biggest thing for me, is like once I realized that there was a community in it, then I never looked back.
Yeah.
And it was always a search for, it's never been really as much a search for fortune and glory, to put it in Indiana Jones terms. But it's always been about the ensemble, finding that ensemble.
Interesting. Yeah.
Which is why, and then after college, I went to college for theater, and then so I found my tribe there, and then went to when I got to LA, I moved to LA and was by myself, and I thought, okay, I need to find my LA tribe.
Mm.
So I went and started classes at Second City and improvising there. And I found a tribe of people there that really has led to everything.
Yeah, take me into that improv world. I
Yeah.
know that places like Second City, you sign up, you take a class, and then that
Mhm.
turns into getting into groups. Like, how does that work?
It's sort of, they all sort of treat it a little differently. So the big school, the long or the short history, I guess, would be 1940s. These Viola Spolin invents these improv games. 1950s, her son Paul Sills uses her improv games and creates theater out of that. She had created the games for little kids at Hull House to get them out of their shells in Chicago.
Yeah.
Her son decided it would be good theater, so he creates the Second City, and they use improv as a tool to create sketch shows. Del Close comes along in the 70s and says, why don't we just put the improv itself on stage? And branches off and creates Improv Olympics. So now there's Second City and Improv Olympic. And then that just sort of blossoms, and they pop up all over. The Groundlings popped up in LA in the 80s. UCB popped up in New York in the 90s. So there were all these schools of improv, and they each ran it a little differently. Second City was where I went because it was the oldest. I had lived in Chicago for college, and I used to go to see Second City. Back when I was in school, it was Tina Fey and Rachel Dratch and Scott Adsit and Kevin Dorff. These were the guys that were playing on the main stage at Second City.
Yeah.
So to have a chance for free every Saturday night to rollerblade down to North Wells and watch a pre-fame Tina Fey just crush it on a comedy stage was
right.
Yeah.
Right. But like, if I wanted to get into it right now, could I go take a class?
Absolutely. I mean, not during COVID, but
then from the class, the cream rises to the top. You join together, you create a group, that type of thing.
Yeah, there's a weird sort of hierarchy at each of the places as far as how it works. Like, you start by taking classes and you go through the program. That's the big thing at all of them. And then they each have what are called house teams, because the individual theaters also are running a theater that's doing nightly shows. So like at Improv Olympic, I would go to the bar. You show up at the bar in the front, and then starting at 7 p.m., there's a show every hour on the hour. It's very vaudeville in that way.
Yeah.
And it really does create a community. I like to think of it like, it's almost like going to a music school that has a venue attached. So you learn how to play music, and then everybody forms house bands that play on different nights in the bar.
Got it.
And you mix it up a lot.
What did you learn by taking those classes? Like, were you a different person coming out of those classes, different actor than you were at the beginning?
100%. I was a totally different, for me, like I said, the ensemble being such a huge part of it for me, you really learn in that fearlessness, as far as, you know what, we don't know what's going to happen. There's 4 or 5 or 6 of us on a stage. We all know how to work together to create a thing. So let's focus on each other. Let's focus on doing that. It's not about, going in and learning how to be funny. I don't think improv can teach you how to be funny. I think that funny people gravitate to it because there's wit involved. But I think what it really teaches you is agreement more than anything else. And like imaginative agreement. You know what I mean?
Right. Totally.
Like,
totally.
If I walk out on stage and say scalpel, then somebody is playing a nurse and handing me a scalpel, unquestioned,
Right.
You just agree on the reality, which I love.
Yeah. At what point, how early was, well, I guess I'm making an assumption, but how early was SNL a dream?
Oh, at like 13. That's the dream of so many people. Was that
the goal?
Yeah. Yeah. That was the goal for a long time.
What's the Mike Birbiglia movie where he's on an improv team?
Don't Think Twice.
Is that true? Is that reality?
That movie is weirdly close to reality. Yeah. Did you see this?
I loved that movie. I absolutely loved it.
That's kind of the world. Yeah.
You got this group, and then who is it? Keegan Michael Key who gets the SNL.
It's SNL.
Gig,
yeah.
SNL.
Yeah, whatever
there's kinda
their
like
fake name of it is.
yeah. There's kind of like that resentment, but also happy for them.
Mhm.
Is that the vibe when you're at a place, at an improv place, and somebody gets an audition? Since that's everyone's dream, is that what it's like?
Yeah, it's just like it's sort of a weird, at least in my experience, it feels like a almost uh it's the dream that you kind of leave unspoken about a
Mm,
lot because you're there hopefully for real and at the very least ostensibly to craft a comedy show together as a group and to learn from these these different techniques and styles and create something really funny.
right.
There is also that inescapable, we are in Los Angeles. We do know that these are the schools that get scouted for not just Saturday Night Live, but all kinds of things. So, in the mixed in with thinking of it as a show, there is a lot of thinking of it as a showcase.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then sometimes it's very specific. Like I actually got to audition for Saturday Night Live. Just from doing a bunch of shows there and honing it and working on it, and then they said, okay, Lorne Michaels wants to come and cast. We're
Yeah,
like, all right.
you have the rare experience
Yeah,
of performing in front of Dr. Evil himself.
oh my god, it's
In front of like
it's
first
so
of all, like
terrifying.
first of all, like
Mhm.
what happens to get to that point? Like you said, you're in this group, you're doing
Right.
shows, but like how do you know that Lorne Michaels is coming? What is the process to get to that point?
Well, at that happened like for years. We would all throw our best sketches of the year or characters that we'd created. We would all make it like half of my buddies annually. It was like, oh, it's SNL tape season. We'd all make tapes and send them to SNL.
Yeah.
Then there was one year, 2014, I guess, that they were doing a massive hire on the show. They were revamped. They were getting a whole bunch of new cast members, and Lorne Michaels had reached out to the woman who runs Improv Olympic and said, "Hey, we're gonna do we're doing a big casting this year, so set up a showcase night for us."
Mm.
And when they said that began like a 2-month process of sending in because now the theater was determining what they were going to do, how they were going to narrow it down and have their dozen people that, because there were each of the big comedy theaters in LA was doing one.
Oh,
and
got it. Yeah.
IO did theirs, and there's IO's 12 people, and then you go to a different theater and there's their 12 people.
Right.
But yeah, so and then they whittled it down and whittled it down and whittled it down over the course of months. And I made it into that final 12 for the IO show. And then they took out of that show. And then we all thought that Lorne Michaels was coming that night. He wasn't. We thought he was. Somebody from the show was. And they took 2 of us from that night and put us in like a final round.
Mm.
And there were 12 of us in that. And 6 people from that show got cast on Saturday Night Live. And I was not one of the 6th.
Wow.
One of the 6. But yeah, 6 out of 12. And it was the most harrowing experience knowing, because I knew my stuff backwards and forwards, but every step that I had made since I was 13 had in some way related to getting to this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I walked out on stage and there's Lorne Michaels, and I just took a deep breath and I did my stuff. And I think it went as well as it could go.
Uh-huh.
And it was it's a real weird sort of turning point in my life, because it was like, okay, I'd been working toward this thing from the time I was 13. I went through Second City. I went to Chicago for acting school. I learned how to be a better actor. I learned comedy. I surrounded myself by comedy people. I went and did National Lampoon Lemmings, which was a tour that a lot of the original SNL cast members had done before they went to SNL. It was an absolute dream of mine.
Yeah.
And I got in front of Lorne and I didn't get the job.
Yeah.
And that's a weird moment.
Yeah.
Because then life, it's sort of freeing, because then life sort of opens up after that. When the goal isn't so focused on one thing for 20 years.
Right.
That now it's like, oh, okay, well, It's like Inigo Montoya at the end of The Princess Bride. You're like, I've been in the revenge business so long, I don't know what to do with myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, was that an immediate feeling, or did that take some time?
It took a little time. I mean, once I found out that I didn't get it,
Mm-hmm.
it was yeah, I don't know. I guess it was one of those like, okay, well, now what, pal?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I had other things on the vision board, you know. And it was
Did you watch that season? Did you watch that season and go,
yeah,
I could have done that?
no, I watched it. I think everyone on there is very talented. And they were all very nice in the room, you know, like,
Yeah.
so I wished everyone well. And it was right after that I was like, you know what? SNL's not going to work. Let's go to New York. Let's go try for Broadway.
Yeah.
So I moved to New York for 3 years.
It's interesting they just recently had their big anniversary show, and they showed old footage of auditions. And you can find some of them on YouTube even and stuff. But when you see the auditions of the people who didn't get it.
Yeah.
And then when, Kevin Hart, Galifianakis, Jim Carrey.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very specific niche, a very specific time, a very specific place for every single person that auditions, I think. But did you feel any validation at all that you were even in the room with him? That you even got the shot?
Yeah, because there were so many steps to go through to get there. And I knew that my stuff was funny. Because a friend of mine, not only because I thought it was funny, but a friend of mine who has always been very, very harshly critical of any comedy that I have written. He's a wonderful, very dear friend of mine, but he's a writer. And every time I would write a comedy bit, his reaction was always the same, was like, just let me write you something. Which was always his reaction. And he saw one of my prelim rounds for this SNL audition. And afterwards I saw him and he kind of nodded and he went, oh, it worked. Who knew? And I was like, that is the best compliment I could have gotten, was it worked. Who knew?
Yeah. So you moved to New York, and then what happens in New York, and then what leads to Blood and Treasure?
New York ate me alive.
Really?
Yeah.
Which, by the way, just side note, I had one of the best nights of my life with you in New York.
Oh man, it is. I introduced you to the world's greatest place, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say it was one of the most unexpectedly awesome nights of my life.
Wasn't it delightful? That's what that city is. You just go, I got a place. You got to come check out this place.
And not only did you say I got a place, you gave me the address of a place that was close to the place, so I couldn't Yelp where we were going and figure out what. It was a total surprise.
Exactly.
And if I'm being honest, we got down to this place. It was a little club down some stairs, and I looked at Raquel and I was like, oh my God, how do I tell him that we hate places like this? Because it's just like this tiny little bar. It's crowded. Like how long do we have to stay here before I tell him, hey, this isn't really our deal? And then all of a sudden you hear a piano and you're like, oh, there's a dude. I didn't even see a piano there. And he's playing a Les Mis song. That's kind of cool. And then all of a sudden the entire bar starts singing. And immediately I went, okay, I get it. And this is awesome.
Yeah. Marie's Crisis in New York is the name of the bar.
And I literally, Raquel and I laugh all the time because we were looking at each other like, how do we tell him that we hate places like this, little crowded bars? And then we were there for hours and it was awesome.
Oh man. Yeah, that was such a fun night. Well, I knew you would love it. I know what a big fan of musicals you are. I know that you're writing a musical, for Pete's sake.
Yes, of course I loved it. But I just love that you made us meet somewhere else so we couldn't look it up. It was just and the fact that like we happened to walk in at a time that they weren't singing or doing anything.
Yeah, which was kind of perfect.
It was perfect because then it was such a surprise when they did. The whole night was awesome.
Did you think that I was just like, no, you have to go to this super cool bar? And then we walk in and it's just like You're like, this bar is crowded for no reason other than one person decided it was cool. So now everybody goes to this bar.
Yes, and that part is the only cool part of Maurice Crisis. It's not nice down there. It's not, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
the
it's
drink,
not.
the drink wasn't good. You know,
No, the
It's
drink's
like-
fine. Nobody cares about the drinks there. It's
No.
it's an $8 Bud Light.
yes. So when we walk in and there's nothing going on, I was like, oh, this place is terrible.
Oh, ye of little faith, my friend. Oh, ye of little faith.
Okay, enough about Maurice Crisis. New York ate you alive.
Yeah,
Tell
New
me
York
about it.
ate me alive. But the thing is, well, Maurice Crisis was a big part of my time in New York because I realize now that I love the theater. I grew up in the theater. It's where I'm the most comfortable.
Mhm.
But New York theater is a thing that you can't just drop into. You know what I mean? In much the same way that the comedy scene in Los Angeles was, it's about nurturing relationships and building for part of it, building your street cred, and then
Yeah.
additionally like just building up your experiences there. And I come into New York and I could not get arrested in that town as far as acting work, and I did not have any other work coming in, so I wound up doing audiobooks from my apartment, which in New York City, your apartment is not big.
Right.
As my friend put it, he was like, oh yeah, you're working out of home in New York. Home, which is for everyone the worst thing about New York. I was like, yeah, that's kind of it.
Yeah.
So I was doing audiobooks from home, which were, a godsend to have this work at all. But I was super light on money. I was, I was just hustling constantly, trying to get auditions and trying to get any sort of work that I could. But I feel like I never became a New Yorker.
Mhm.
I was a tourist in New York for 3 years.
Yeah.
Every day I would walk around the city and go somewhere that I'd never been before. And I'm still absolutely in love with that city.
Yeah.
I know I've heard you say, like, you couldn't live there, but boy, is it just an amazing, amazing place to visit. I feel like I was on a
It's my
3-year
favorite place
visit.
to go. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's my favorite place to go. I've only been 3 times,
Mhm.
and it was low 70s and sunny every time I've gone.
Oh yeah, no, you didn't.
So
you
I've not had the real New York
the
experience.
full year of
I've had the Disneyland New York experience.
Right. Yeah, the May and October version.
Yeah. No, people always say you have to be there in August in the subway when everyone smells, and then you
Ugh.
have to be there in December in the cold where you don't even
Yeah.
want to go outside to really know what New York is like.
Oh yeah, we had the polar vortex while I was there.
Oh,
Yeah, that August subway thing. Ugh.
yeah.
Oh, and you know what's funny? Even in wintertime, it can be even hotter on the subway because they heat the subways, right? The subways are heated,
Yeah.
but there's not like a thermostat that's like, let's put it at 74 and then
Right.
no, it is just heat blasting on you and you are bundled up in coats.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, hey, I'm gonna crawl into this easy bake oven, shoot myself through the underground, and then come back up topside to -10 degrees. It's a wonder anyone is,
Yeah.
healthy
Yeah.
there in winter.
Yeah. So you get Blood and Treasure. We talked about that.
Mhm.
How do you define success? I mean, you've done acting as a profession. You've done
Mhm.
voiceover work. You've done acting. You've worked at Disneyland. You've worked all these things. You've
Yeah.
maintained a livelihood. Now you're on a big show. Do you call yourself successful now? And would 11-year-old Mark have looked at this as success?
Yeah, I do. I think I'd say that I'm successful now. But I would say that I was successful. For me, it's all success is just when you can pay all of your bills acting.
Yeah.
That's what I always thought that was success for me, was
Right.
things I can, and it doesn't matter where. Like I felt that I had made it in Hollywood when I got hired at Disneyland.
Mhm.
I skipped over that whole time, but I did from after university. I moved to LA and then worked at Disneyland and Universal Studios for 9 years as an
Right.
actor, which is another of the best vaudevilles you could ever imagine.
Which is a big deal. Like people don't
Yeah.
understand how good you have to be a cast member at
Yeah,
Disneyland.
thanks. It's a really talented group of people, and you know, some of the best cut their teeth in the theme park. Steve Martin, Kristen Wiig, Wayne Brady. I'm trying to think of
Yeah.
other just like giant folks that came out of there. Eden Espinosa was a theme park gal from Wicked.
Really?
Yeah. But yeah, so like that to me was making it. I was like, great. I learned a trade. I got myself a blue collar job plying this trade.
Yeah.
I mean, I always did hope for, you know, film and TV stuff and other things to blow up,
Yeah.
of course. And I was, you know, busting my butt trying to get more things. But the fact that I was working every day, getting in front of an audience, and that was my only source of income, and I was alive.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's making it, I
Yeah.
think.
I mean, if you just live in LA at all, you know how many people are trying
Yeah.
and how many people don't get to that point.
Yeah. Well,
where
I
they
think
could
also a
just
lot of
survive
people
on that.
a lot of people disregard theme parks as a viable like way of making it work, you know, like whether it's because they don't want the drive, whether it's because they don't want to get the velvet handcuffs as they talk about when you know you're doing a show but you can't leave for auditions and things. Some people just don't like the anonymity of it, you know what I mean? Like, no, I moved to LA to become a star and I'm anonymous if I'm doing this play, or if I'm doing this, you know, if I'm a cowboy on a rooftop in Frontierland is not my name in lights, you know what I mean?
Right. If you look at from now until the end, what else do you want to do? Are you good? Do you want to keep making stuff? What's
well, of course, yeah.
What's the dream? What's the goal?
I want to keep making stuff. You know what? The goal shifted. Now I want to host SNL. That'd be fun. As far as like tangible goals go, that's definitely
that would be awesome.
On the list.
That would be awesome.
I just want to keep the ball in the air, you know. Right now I could not have asked for a better show to be a part of. Like the cast all loves each other. The showrunners are wonderful, fearless leaders. We shoot in cities all over the world, like, and I get paid decent money to do it. So like I feel like I got, like I said, I feel like I got really lucky. I feel like I won the job lottery amongst a sea of friends of mine who are all, you know, we are all of the same level, of the same tenacity, of the same mostly experiences. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not putting myself ahead of anyone in any way other than I happen to get an opportunity and that lottery ticket paid off.
Is there anything, and the answer might just be no, but is there anything with SNL and not getting that gig? Like when obviously SNL has launched careers. People have gone on and done amazing things after SNL, let alone being on it. But also you see interviews where people go, "Oh, you were on SNL. That's awesome." And people are like, like it's not this utopian, everyone's just creating amazing art and you're having a great time. It's a grind and it's hard, and people have, like, I just watched a thing with Bill Hader who was like it wore me down. I couldn't be there anymore. Is there like a bullet dodged sense to that, or would you have done it regardless?
Oh, I'd have done it regardless. I would have loved doing it regardless. But yeah, I understand that people say that because, you know, it's funny. Like I always grew up an actor, which I think of as an interpretive art more than a creative one. I'm not really a writer. I improvise, but I prefer, you know, being a cog in the wheel or a cog in the machine.
Yeah.
But there are so many brilliant like artists who have a clear vision. You know, I never thought of myself as like an artist or a comedian with a clear vision of the world. Like You said Kevin Hart was one of the ones you saw. Like, I can't imagine Kevin Hart doing anything but his brand of comedy,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
thing
yeah,
he
yeah.
does. You know what I mean? Sarah
Yeah.
Silverman is a comedian
Yeah, yeah,
voice. She's a very good actor. Bill Hader
Kevin
is
Hart's not sitting in a room and going, "Oh, John Malkovich is the guest. I wrote a perfect sketch for John Malkovich."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or sitting there waiting for someone to hand him things. So I think a lot of really good artists get frustrated there.
Hmm.
I was happy to just go and be a grunt, you know.
Yeah,
But yeah, it feels like I'm, where I'm supposed to be now.
that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So when do we get season 2?
Man, I don't know.
We don't know still.
We don't know. Originally it was last summer, and then it was this fall, and then now and then it was January, but January's almost over. It's about to be February, but I know that I'm going in to do ADR next
Got
week,
it.
which is like the last step.
Yeah.
So
yeah, nice.
once ADR is in, it could be in a couple of weeks. I would love it if I turn on the Super Bowl in a couple of weeks and there's a commercial for us. That would be amazing. I don't know if that's going to happen.
Yeah. So part of this podcast is my kind of spiritual faith journey.
And I gotta say,
yeah.
I've loved listening to it.
Oh, cool.
I have learned so much. And you're a wonderful open book, and I'm happy to be on here and talking about things.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. What has God, spirituality, faith, any of those words, what does that trigger? What has it been in your life, and kind of what are you processing now?
Well, playing a priest on TV got me an opportunity to talk to a great Jesuit, Father Jim Martin, he wrote Lives of the Saints, and he wrote a book, which is sort of like his memoir of specific saints throughout his life that have made a difference.
Right.
He's a the Jesuit's Guide to Everything. Like he's sort of a one of these experts. And when I talked to him, CBS hooked it up where like I got to have just like a good like couple hours conversation with him.
Yeah.
And at one point he used the phrase, let me guess, spiritual but not religious. And I did not know until that moment that it was a cliche. But it is a cliche that I fit, I think.
Yeah.
I think for me, I've always believed in God. Mm-hmm. And whatever God means throughout history and throughout my personal experience with it. I think love is too powerful a thing to not be divine. I think there is so much of the world, whether it's beauty, love, the sense of ensemble, relationships. I think that it's we as humans don't know the full extent of everything, which also leads me to, I think that we as humans tend to get a little myopic when it comes to how to address things. So in my opinion, and in my belief, God is the universe. The universe is love. There is a love frequency that we can all vibrate on. There is a force for good in the universe. I think that it is God. I think it is Allah. I think it is any of a number of iterations that it has had over the centuries. And I think that divinity has shown up at different times throughout history, and books have been written about when that divinity showed up, whether it's the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Quran, or works that are written after that. I think that the same love energy that was tapped into by the writers of the Gospels, I think that energy and that divine touch, I think that's the same divine touch that touched Galileo and Newton. And I think that the Bible didn't stop being written 2,000 years ago. I think Jesus said, basically, all in good time. You'll know more later. I don't think he was just talking about his arrest and crucifixion. I think he was talking about look, over the next several thousand years, piece by piece, humanity is going to get closer to a more perfect understanding of this.
Right.
So yes, to fit the cliche from Father Jim, spiritual but not necessarily religious.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's funny. I grew up in youth groups and, went to Christian college and all these things. And I literally thought that all those things, that love you talk about, like that rhythm to life that you can connect to, that peace, I literally thought that was only happening to me because I was a Christian. And the rest of the world was in dire despair because
Yeah.
I didn't know any of them.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know anybody. You know what I mean? And like now that I think about it, like I could have gone like, oh, I have some family members that aren't really, religious or very spiritual, and they're okay.
Yeah,
like
they're doing great.
okay.
They're good people.
Yeah, but it wasn't until I really like got out of college and what's funny is I went to a Christian bubble college and then went
Mhm.
right into ministry.
Yeah.
Which can still be a bubble in this little town of Montrose. And
But I love Montrose Church.
Oh, it's fantastic.
You guys do such a great job of not being a myopic bubble.
Yeah, and I mean the only reason I can do this podcast and be open
Mhm.
and talk about stuff is because my boss, Pastor Dave, is
Mhm.
awesome, and
Yeah.
he lets me. There's a lot of places where I would have been fired by now. The stuff I say. But I saw it through the arts. I saw it through
Mhm.
Tim Minchin, who was on last season. I saw it by going, what the heck? This guy is an atheist writing about the exact same stuff I believe in. I can't discard that.
Yeah.
I have to look at the commonality in that and decide what it is. And what's funny is when I talk to Tim, we get to a point of like, we agree on so much stuff. And for him, that proves that there is no God, that it's just the human experience all leading to this moment where we believe the same stuff. And for me, I look at that as the proof of the existence of God, that there's a God, like you say, that is all of love in all of creation, all of this stuff. And it just like blew my mind that people outside of my little bubble were experiencing those things.
Yeah. I was the same way. Like growing up, I went to Catholic school and we were taught, it was for 8 years. This is Catholic school, but this is also in the deep South.
Oh yeah.
Where Christianity, I would argue, has been weaponized to great detriment over the last 40 some odd years.
Yeah.
And I was taught that it is us against the world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then I got into the world, and I was very much into it. Like all through high school, I was involved with my church. But for me, it was about the fellowship. It wasn't necessarily, there were a lot of things that I would just be like, really? This doesn't make much, you know what? Forget it. It's fine. I love all the people here.
Yeah, it was a place of really good people who were trying to be good, and you played games and they gave you pizza.
Exactly.
So why would you not go to that?
Yeah, that is amazing. Like, and we would have a lock-in. You'd be like, "What do you mean we're having a lock-in? You mean we're all gonna just bring sleeping bags and eat pizza? This is amazing. Church is the best."
Totally.
And then you hear and read some things that are not great, and it's like, but that's not what I grew up with. Why do like, who is, I don't know. Maybe it's that that's such a wonderful feeling that it's easy, like, for people to go, no, this is insular and this is mine, and I have to protect this thing. I think you said it once on an episode where you like the idea of what a Christian means, and when I was that age, it was like, no, it meant me and my friends, doing charity work and doing good deeds, and
it's community. It's no different than you finding the right improv group, than you finding Thrilling Adventure Hour, finding the Drunk History thing. Like, it's just a group where you belong, and it's a good group because your mom likes that you go there because they teach you about Jesus.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was what I grew up with, and that's always, and that really is like, that's what I love what you guys do at Montrose, because I was skeptical, honestly, because I'd spent so long with the idea of, I'm a fervent leftist politically.
Yeah.
Which means politically in the United States, Christianity has sort of been the opposition.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I was taught as a kid in Catholic school that it's a sin to vote for a Democrat. A sin.
Yeah.
Which is like, come on, guys. Like if we're all trying to vibrate on the same love frequency, let's all try to vibrate on the same love frequency and find those things that, you know, find the good in these people and not call them a sin to vote for them.
Right.
So that coming from that angle, I had been of late in my adult life skeptical of Christianity.
Yeah.
And going to Montrose Church, which I did. My ex-girlfriend works there with you, and she was the one that introduced me to it, and still lovely person. She says hi. And I was skeptical until I was like, all right, well, this Eric guy's really good. He's super talented, and this band's good. I like the music. Let's see what this Pastor Dave has to say.
Yeah.
I was fully waiting to be I was fully ready to be combative.
Sure.
But he comes from such a place of, hey man, look, I'm just a student of theology who thinks that love reigns. So he does a great job of finding I think finding the common ground.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you go to our church and you're standing up there and you look out, you can, I mean, just from like Facebook, you know where people stand, right, on political issues.
Sure.
And you can go red, blue, and it's like it's like 50%. And I think that's because Dave teaches and preaches about something that's greater than politics. Politics is important. You should have beliefs, and you should vote, and you should go and do all that stuff. But at the end of the day, what Jesus was trying to do had nothing to do with politics.
Right.
Otherwise, he would have just overthrown Rome and taken it for himself and been a political conqueror. And so it's really interesting, though, because I think some people go to our church and go, yeah, it's a conservative right-wing church, or, oh no, it's very liberal. Because they're just he's so middle ground, you know. And the word we use is praus. So when Jesus was preaching in the Sermon on the Mount, he said, blessed are the meek. And the word meek there like often gets misconstrued as like weak or gentle. But the Hebrew word is praus, and it means like the ability to stand in the middle of two extremes. And so like Jesus's whole thing was like, no, I'm not weak, but I'm also not a conquering hero that you wanted me to be. I'm able to stand in the middle of anything. And so these people feel comfortable with me. These people, you know, all these people. And that's the tone that we try to take. We're not getting caught up in this issue or this issue. Like we're praus, we're in the middle. We're able to witness and care for and stand for everybody. And I love that tone for our church. I am convinced this is the only church in America that I could work at and feel comfortable working at it. It's probably not true, but it certainly has worked for me, and I love it. And I love that you have felt comfortable coming.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. I think Prowse, of course, as a nerd, and my brain goes, like David Prowse? Is my first thought.
Now you'll know how to remember it, though.
Yeah, exactly. I will remember that word. Well, that's another thing that you guys do that's great too. And I think a thing that gets lost in theology so often is that it's translated.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, of
like,
course. Yeah.
It was translated. First of all, it's translated from its original. Most of it's Aramaic, Greek.
Yeah.
And then it gets translated into Latin. so
Yeah.
that the higher ups can read it, and then it gets translated into English in the King James version, and like into every language, and everybody's going to use different words.
Right.
Uh,
Right. Yeah, and you have to translate it culturally too for it to mean anything.
Yeah.
Well, dude, I so appreciate you doing this, man. I know
this is so fun.
I was looking forward to this for a long time when you agreed to come do this.
Me too. I've been fired up.
Everyone should go binge watch season 1 of Blood and Treasure if they haven't already done that. You have other things. You have your own podcast that you've had for a while now.
5 years now. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
It is We Got This with Mark and Hal. We would love to have you come on the show and debate whatever pointless thing. That's the premise of our show. Is we settled arguments. Our very first episode was, should you put ketchup on a hot dog? The answer is of course no. And then we've done, should you hang your toilet paper overhand or underhand? And we're doing a full hour on these topics.
Oh.
Yeah, what do you wager on that?
That constantly switches at my house.
Does it really? Like
always
via animosity or just arbitrarily? However,
no, just like I probably need to have a discussion with my wife about it, because I don't know if she's doing it like aggressively or.
Are you an overhand guy? Or are you an underhand?
I think under.
I do you have a cat?
Because when it's over, when you go to break it, it can keep going.
Yeah.
It spills over. If it's under, you break it and it stays.
You know what? I am team underhand. Our episode ultimately determined that overhand.
Oh, yeah.
I know. I'm team underhand generally, but and definitely team underhand if you have a cat. That was one thing, because a cat can get up on it and just and then there's toilet paper all over your floor.
I've been married for 11 years, and this might cause a fight tonight. I don't know. Maybe this is finally time to bring this up.
You know what? Sit down with it. We got all kinds of episodes for this. Is it easier, or is it better to be in a cold room and try to get warm, or in a warm room and try to get cool? Like that was an episode that broke very distinctly down gender lines. We were recording that.
Absolutely. That one my wife and I could be on for sure.
Yeah.
For
sure.
Yeah. Awesome. How do people follow you? I'm sure. Are you Mark Gagliardi on all the socials and whatnot?
Mark Gags. I'm Mark Gags on Instagram and Twitter. And yeah, that's me on the socials. And also at We Got This Tweets is our one for the podcast.
Awesome. I appreciate you, brother. Thanks so much for doing this.
Man, thanks for having me. This was super fun.